Shall I try that again? Just check it's. Oh, okay. Should we do another little? Perfect. Nothing worse than my voice twice. Okay, ready when you. We know? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Children and Education Policy and Accountability Committee. I'm Helen Rowbottom. I'm the chair of this committee. We will go around and just do a round of introductions before we start, but just to open a few housekeeping points as ever. Meeting is being live streamed on the council's YouTube channel. So by participating, you're being consented to being recorded. Too late now, etc. If the fire alarm sounds, then you can leave via the assembly point going through to Riverside Gardens. And we'll just go round and all say hello tonight because we've got some guests. So thank you so much for attending out of hours. So I've gone first, Nandini.
I'm Nandini Ganesh. I run and manage Parents Active, the parent care forum for Hammersmith and Fulham.
Jackie McShann, Director of Children's Services.
Anna Carpenter, Head of Safeguarding.
Kat Miller, Business Development Manager for the LSCP.
Yeah. Good evening, Derek Benson. I'm the Independent Scrutineer for the Safeguarding Children's Partnership.
Hi, I'm Sarah Sanderson, Operational Director of Children and Young People Services.
Hi, Peter Haylock, Director of Education and SEND.
Hello, Phil Thompson, Head of Family Hubs.
Gabrielle, Committee Coordinator.
Councillor Alia Afzal Khan.
Councillor Mercy Ume.
Brilliant. Okay, great. We've got some chunky items tonight, so I'll sort of tap things along nicely, but we've got plenty of time for all the questions. So just to start with the apologies for absence, we've had apologies from Councillor Darryl Brown and Councillor Sanderson. And just to note, members might wish to note the following change in proportionality. The council has approved to allocate a seat to the Green Group, which is taken by Councillor Liz Collins to substitute Councillor Genevieve Nwabe, although she's not here. Number 2, declarations of interest. Anyone wants to declare anything? No? Very good. Minutes of the last meeting. Do members agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of June as an accurate record?
Agreed.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, right, over to our first item. Very pleased to have guests with us this evening. So I'm going to hand over to our guest, Derek Benson, LSCP Scrutineer and Chair of the LSCP Forum, to introduce the report, please. Thank you. No problem at all. Don't worry at all. Classics. It wouldn't be a meeting in the evening if one wasn't a glitch.
Thank you. Hopefully that's working for you now. I'm just going to take you through a very, very brief PowerPoint presentation just to brief yourself and councillors on the Hammersmith and Fulham Local Safeguarding Children's Partnership Annual Report for the year 24-25. So, just to say, give you a bit of context, I joined the partnership in December of last year, so I wasn't here for the entirety of the year that we're talking about tonight, but those 4 months did give me an opportunity to get my feet under the table and get a good understanding of the partnership. So the annual report, which hopefully you have all had the opportunity to make yourselves familiar with, it, as it says on the slide there, it's a comprehensive account that includes data from the Hammersmith and Fulham Children and Young People's Services. It outlines the progress that the partnership made against the priorities that have been set for the year. It gives details of the activities, outputs and critically outcomes from the various subgroups of the partnership. It also details activity by the partner agencies, and it also provides some interesting information as to how we feel the partnership should work going forward, the new priorities. Just to give you the very brief outline, hopefully sometime last year you may have been briefed on the need to introduce new arrangements. It was the same for every safeguarding partnership across the country. After working together 2023, 3 designated safeguarding partners, the local authority in the form of the Children's Services, Police and Health in the form of the Integrated Care Board. And it's worth noting that although working together does not stipulate that education should be a statutory safeguarding partner, it makes absolute sense that education are front and centre in the partnership. And in Hammersmith and Fulham, we're lucky enough, predating me, so I can take no credit for this, that's very much the case, that we have a very, very prominent education voice in the partnership. It mentions there myself starting with the partnership last year, and the fact that we've updated the priorities, which I'll come back to further on in the presentation, if I may. It's worth saying that there are, we understand, plans for the Department for Education at some stage in the hopefully not too distant future to put education on a statutory footing as the 4th safeguarding partner. What that will look like, when that will happen, we don't know. But as I say, I think it's safe to say that in Hammersmith and Fulham, we are safely ahead of that particular curve by having education closely involved in the partnership. So moving on to the next slide, just a very brief summary of progress against the priorities for last year. First one being focus on children's mental health. Stating the obvious, a hugely important issue, not just in this borough, but everywhere, especially post-COVID. We've seen the pressures on our young people sort of become greater, as you would imagine, both at home, at school, in the community and online. And the annual report there provides a wealth of information as to the activity and the progress against that particular priority. Second priority is around addressing domestic abuse, following the Domestic Abuse Act 2021, which recognised children and young people as victims of domestic abuse, as potentially as victims of domestic abuse, but our role is to apply a safeguarding lens to that particular issue. There is others within various partnership agencies and bodies that work around domestic abuse. And again, the annual report provides a wealth of information. I wasn't proposing to take you through page after page of the content of the report, but as it's there for your information should you wish to go through it in detail. The third priority around transitional safeguarding. The word transition can mean different things in different contexts. In the context of safeguarding, it's when children and young people make a move from potentially primary into secondary school, but usually in this context, it's talking about those children who transition from childhood into adulthood. It was once described to me, not in the context of Hammersmith and Fulham, but children and adults aren't necessarily on the same gauge railway. So we have to make sure that transition is as smooth as possible. And there is a lot of activity within the partnership to make sure that happens. I've recently, and I know this isn't within the performance year we're talking about, done a piece of scrutiny which involved talking to colleagues, including those from the Gangs, Violence and Exploitation Unit. And it is noticeable that in Hammersmith and Fulham, there are panels, both in the children's world and in the adults world, which allows that push through and the pull into adulthood. So there is a system in place, which we can talk about tonight or on another occasion to suit yourselves. But the setup in Hammersmith is a strong one. There is a transitions team, as it says in the report, but it's important for all of us to remember that vulnerability doesn't stop at 18. At that midnight on as you go from your 17th to your 18th birthday, it doesn't stop. And so we have to make sure that the systems are in place to continue that support for our young adults. The fourth priority last year around safeguarding adolescents, including those with disabilities. There is a lot within the report about the activity. Just a few things I wanted to mention to you. There was a pan-London stop and search audit. It is an issue that is one of perennial interest and concern across the capital and beyond. And we're just waiting for the final outcome of that. It might seem a little bit late. Here we are in November 25 when we're talking about something that happened in March 24, but it's a big piece of work. And I think the outcome of that will be of interest to all of us. The Child Sexual Abuse Hub there, as it says, is another positive initiative within the borough. There was a lot of work done around children with complex needs. Harm outside the home, extrafamilial harm, contextual safeguarding. There are a number of different terms for it, but the setup in child protection historically has been around harm within the home. Sort of recent years, there's been a focus on harm outside the home, and that's something that a lot of work has been done in the borough around that. There's information in there around the training offer from the partnership, but I'd also want to mention the fact that it was really interesting arriving in Hammersmith and Fulham, having the conversations about what our priorities might look like going forward. And we were able to have those conversations in the context of significant feedback from our children and young people. A survey back in last year gave us a lot of information as to what our children, our young people are telling us in the borough that we need to be focusing on. There's more information in the report about that as well. It's just going to give you a very brief run through the work of the subgroups, the first being the case review group, a hugely important feature of every Safeguarding Children's Partnership, wherever you work. It is looking at those incidents, those cases where a child has come to harm. It's the core function of any partnership. And these are approached with a learning and improvement mentality. And again, there's a lot of information in the report about that. The second subgroup I wanted to mention to you tonight, quality, performance and challenge. That is the body that within the partnership that looks at audits, that looks at Section 11 of the Children Act 2004, where we ask the partner agencies to account for how they discharge their duties relating to children and young people. So we send out an audit to colleagues in the local authority, various parts of the NHS, the police, the probation service. And we also have another form of audit under Section 175 of the Education Act 2002, where we ask our schools to similarly account for how they discharge their duties relating to the safeguarding and promoting the welfare of children and young people. And I've already made this point, but I'll make it again. This report is for 24-25. Here we are in November, and we are working still to establish a meaningful performance framework for the partnership. There is an abundance of data from the local authority. The other partner agencies similarly have an abundance of data, health colleagues, the police. We're trying to draw that together into a coherent piece so that when we appear before you next year, we'll be able to give you a little bit more detail on that. It's a work in progress. The Safeguarding Partnership Group, and at this point I mentioned Anna, who chairs that group. I've worked for a number of different partnerships over the years. With a scrutiny hat on, I can safely say this is a really positive attribute of the partnership. It allows that interaction with frontline practitioners, and it is another asset that Hammersmith and Fulham should be proud of. And the fourth subgroup there, learning and development, pretty much does what you would expect to do from a title such as that. Working Together 2023 has an expectation on any partnership that it has a training offer, and a lot of work goes in locally to make sure that is an effective training offer. We do a training needs analysis, we listen to the practitioners, what do you need from us, and we try as best we can to deliver that. And there's a more detail for you there about the training delivery locally. The next slide talks about the fact that the report includes contributions from those partner agencies, not just the local authority. So we've got sections within the report from the Metropolitan Police Service, from the Integrated Care Board, from different health providers, from the Gangs, Violence and Exploitation Unit, from the LADO, and I know I'm repeating myself here, from the voice of young people. And I make no apologies for repeating that. I think that's really important. It's a credit to the partnership that it has that effective route into listening to the young people of the borough. And I think the final slide, just to set out the strategic direction for the next 3 years. We met as a partnership earlier in the year to determine what the priorities should be going forward. Headlines are that those priorities are staying safe, early identification and prevention, and think family. They're on page 42 of the annual report if you want more detail. But I would also just wish to highlight that we have cross-cutting themes that underpin all of those priorities around the voice of the child. Again, we are a safeguarding children's partnership, so that's to be expected. Anti-racist practice, and to improve wherever we can, multi-agency information sharing. And the last thing I just wanted to say was these annual reports don't just write themselves. Kat, Sarah, who's not here tonight, and Anna have put in a tremendous amount of work to produce a report that I believe should give you a significant degree of reassurance that the partnership is in a good place. And I would commend the report to you. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you, Derek. I agree, extremely thorough. I have a range of questions, but we'll renounce my chair's privilege to look left and right if anyone wants to kick us off. No? Councillor May.
Just first of all, to say thank you is a great report. Okay. Sorry. Thank you, Derek. It's a great report, I must say, and it must be challenging. So my question will be, how were you able to work together with all the partners, and especially where we have people or children in different cultures and family with different cultures? So how were you able to work alongside with all these people?
To start, or did you want to start? If I take with a scrutineer's hat on, and I appreciate you may think I'm labouring the point, but having worked in a number of partnerships, you don't always see that level of contribution from young people. So I think the fact that we have those mechanisms locally should be recognised. The National Panel for Safeguarding earlier in the year published a report about It's Silent, Race, Racism and Safeguarding, which is a really important piece of work. And I still currently work with 2 other partnerships in other parts of the country. And we are having similar conversations about how do we make that real? How do we deliver the aspirations of such an important report locally? And it's something we will be talking about going forward through the year. And that will include contributions of all the partner agencies. We mentioned things like the stop and search order. It's another contributory factor to that. So there's a lot of work going on. There's no complacency, but in a multicultural, a diverse borough like Hammersmith and Fulham, it's something that we have to be cognizant of in everything we do as a partnership.
Perfect. I'll go, I've got, Councillor Ali Khan, but I'm just going to go to Nandini first because her hand was up first. Thank you.
No, it's a brilliant report. I was just curious, why wasn't education considered a mandatory partner? Because everything happens from schools and they are best placed to judge whether there's any safeguarding issue.
if I think, because I have the word independent, I might be able to say something that Peter will add to, but when they were writing Working Together 2018 and then Working Together 2023, many people within the safeguarding community made representations to the Department for Education that they should be a statutory partner. My take, others may have a different view. I think it was in the too difficult tray. And how do you pin down education when you've got early years, primary, secondary, special schools, independents, free schools? And I've probably missed a lot out there. But as I say, locally, the commitment was made before I arrived to have education very much there. And things like the setting of the priorities this year, Peter was at that meeting, so the voice of education is strong. We had representatives from independent schools at that meeting, and others will be better placed to talk about perhaps some of the technical side of it. But culturally, looking at it from the outside, we are well placed.
Derek, your answers are spot on, but just to avoid any kind of select committee energy, feel free to field from different corners of the other side if people want to chip in. Hannah.
Yeah, I think in terms of education, I think largely for a long time they were considered part of children's, and actually now they're given the recognition of that they're quite discreet in their standalone, and we need to focus on that. I think we've had a really strong representation from our education colleagues, both at our LSCP forum, which is the more strategic partnership meeting, and at the partnership group, which is the operational arm, which I chair. We've always had very, very strong educational representation. So several schools, we have our early years, we have a whole range of voluntary sector, which includes some of those voluntary education support mechanisms. So we do have a very, very strong education input. And just going back to the previous question about involving children and young people, the voice of the child has been central to both the partnership group and to the LSCP forum. We have a very strong relationship with our youth voice service. We have representation from Young Hammersmith and Fulham Foundation. They work very hard with us to make sure that we have this feedback loop with children and young people, and also with our Children in Care Council, so that they're feeding in. We understand what the current issues are. It's a you said, we did, so we feed back what we did with that information. So part of that was feeding into our new priorities and what was important for them. And they were very much integral in that. So just to kind of answer both of those.
Councillor Afzal Khan.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Mr. Benson, Ms. Miller and Carpenter for providing us with such a thorough report and all the work that you've done to collate all this data. I'm just going to take Nandini's question and just ask for a little bit more detail, because you plan to make education as the fourth statutory partner. How are the education partners influencing the safeguarding priorities, and what measurable changes have resulted with their inclusion in this process?
I'll hand over in a second, just to say it's not within our gift to make education a statutory partner. That will require statutory guidance from the DfE. We've done it, or colleagues have done it, sort of because they recognise the importance of doing it. And I think we're sort of part of, along with other partnerships, leading the way.
No, absolutely. I think it would be great to have education on board as a statutory partner, but so far they've been part of the process in H&F, which is great. And I was wondering what measurable changes have resulted from their inclusion.
I'm not sure I'll be able to answer all your questions, but I think what we have been looking at how we can develop an education focused subgroup so that we are engaging with our education partners across the piece. So, you know, whether it's secondary, whether it's primary, whether it's early education, making sure that we are understanding the core issues that are arising for education, that's escalated up so that we can discuss it, so that we can think about how we support schools to safeguard children on a day-to-day basis. So that's something that we're currently working on. We've got meetings set up so that we are working with that. And as Derek has said, we've had education who've been involved in our partnership for some considerable time now, both as a strategic partner, but also on the ground in terms of attending the LSCP and attending the partnership group. In terms of some of their outcomes, I think that there are some comments in the report. We had some feedbacks from some of our schools who shared some of the impact that they've had. So I can give you an example. So at the partnership group, one of the big concerns for education has been around children and vaping. And that came to the partnership group well over 12 months ago. It was raised at the partnership group. That was escalated up to our forum, where it was discussed. We looked at it from a public health point of view, and there was a whole strategy that was then put in place to look at how we deal with vaping locally, how we support schools education. So in terms of an impact, I think that having those education colleagues at those meetings, raising those key safeguarding issues, us being able to take them forward, and from a strategic perspective, then look and say, right, what are we going to do in terms of supporting young people in the borough and protecting them from vaping? What can we do about that? There is a vaping strategy now that has been developed. So I think that's just a short example of some of the impacts that education being involved in our partnership has had.
Brilliant. Thanks. Jackie, do you want to come in?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. When Ofsted come in, they look at the relationship between education and social care, and they want to ensure that the whole education landscape is, I was going to use the word educated, but is aware of safeguarding, that it's a priority for all education providers, and we have every type of provider in our sort of world here. But also that there is good communication and that there's confidence around the communication, that advice is available to our schools when they've got concerns. And relationships are key to that. Communication is key to that. And confidence in the level of being able to refer in, to know that concerns are responded to by education partners. But equally, social care, because social care is upstream, you want to know that that your education partners are able to identify and refer on and discuss, explore concerns. And we try to do that in a way that's empowering for all. I'll just remind you, for example, and Peter can talk more specifically around education in schools experience, but when there were concerns about a particular website in private schools several years ago, Ofsted came in as part of a thematic deep dive into that, and we're very confident that there was good communication between our local authority designated officer, known as the LADO, who provides safeguarding in schools advice and support, and schools. And actually, our schools have responded very positively and very transparently to the issues that were raised. So it's dynamic and it's ongoing, but we've always seen education as key partners, and you'll see that as part of the exec group, we've included education, and they're part of our quarterly safeguarding.
Perfect.
Just to say briefly, while Peter's sorting out his charger there, that I think we both had the same thought, because we're working so closely around attendance and improving school attendance for children, and how that's featured in the LSCP annual reports. So when you're looking at tangible outcomes, the fact that we're engaging as a partnership around our broader attendance strategy as a key safeguarding and early intervention approach.
Actually, I might just come in on that one, Sarah. I have some broader questions, but the specific one was, I just wanted to clarify, when there is a section on attendance at 93% and persistent absence rate at 17, is that 17% of the overall absence rate? Like, what's the, otherwise that obviously doesn't add up. So
So,
Let's check.
no, so the attendance is two separate figures. So the overall attendance is 93%.
Yeah.
It's actually going up at the moment, which is really positive. And then the other 7% would be made up of authorised and unauthorised absence. The persistent absence is the percentage of children who have got attendance under 90%.
Oh, okay. Might just be worth popping an extra sentence in, because otherwise it looks bigger than it is. Got it. Thank you.
But also, Councillor, just exactly the school attendance, but also children who are missing school or education, or children that aren't appearing on rolls. Those are the kind of safeguarding concerns and the links that we're making all the time. And one of the features of children's services here, but also the partnership here, is that joint approach. So people aren't working in silos. It's about everybody working in collaboration to protect children and safeguard their welfare.
Great. Thank you. Do you want to ask a follow-up? Yeah, go for it, Councillor Khan.
So I have two questions on inequality and inclusion. One is, you talked about, and the report talks about, the anti-racist practice. So how is the anti-racist practice being evidenced beyond training attendance? And are there any disparities in outcomes that are being tracked and reported transparently for, let's say, SEND pupils or Black boys? Are these disparities in outcome being tracked and reported transparently?
Anti-racist practice is a cross-cutting theme for this new priority for this 25, 26, 27. So it's not something that we've measured up until now.
Okay.
So it will be in the next reporting cycle that you'll see those kind of measurements of how we're measuring our anti-racist practice and what that means.
Perfect, thank you. And then the other question was that how is the local safeguarding partnership addressing the digital safeguarding gap, and especially about online harm, exploitation? So how are you addressing the online safeguarding concerns?
It's a tricky one because it's huge. It is something that comes up regularly. I mean, we certainly do focus on training within online safety. That's a big training element for us. In terms of having strategies or developing strategies to address online safety, that's where it becomes a bit more challenging, because this is not it's not something that is local to Hammersmith and Fulham. Obviously, it's a countrywide concern. So, I mean, there are aspects that we're dealing with, such as at the moment we've been looking at online gambling, online gaming, how that can lead to mental health issues and financial issues for children. So we've actually got at the moment a working group that is looking at how we support young people and their families around those issues, how we help people identify them, making sure that information is out there. What are the referral pathways? What are the support pathways? So when we're looking at online safety issues, we look at it from that perspective. So what are our support mechanisms? Where can people go if they need support and their help, if they're worried about a young person, and what is happening online? If there are specific unique themes of online safety, then that is something that we would escalate up to the forum, that we would look at it strategically and how we're managing that locally. So do we need to be doing something specific? Is this something that needs to be shared more widely with our partners in London, or is it something that needs to be shared more countrywide, which we can do through the national panel? So there are different mechanisms, but certainly ensuring that we have support mechanisms and information out there. I'm just being shown and reminded about Catch 22, which is, it's an organisation that is particularly looking at providing support around online safety. And they're coming to my partnership group on Thursday. So we have people that come along and present at the partnership group that tell us about the work that they're doing. We had YGAM, which is the support mechanism for young people and gambling. But it's also looking at, it's not just about gambling, it's about all of the other aspects of safeguarding that comes with that. So whether it's relationships, whether it becomes, people become, their mental health become affected by it, they get into debt. There's a whole range of different issues that you need to look at it, which are connected to one specific issue. So I'm sorry, I don't have a finite answer, but I hope that gives you an idea.
That's a great start. It's a big issue, so thank you.
Great, thank you. I might indulge myself with a couple of questions. Derek, I noted that you said there was an abundance of data, but I wondered if there's any data sets that would be really valuable that you don't have access to kind of plug into what you're looking at.
We're wrestling with it at the moment. I think it's fair to say if you look at the local authority, there is, I'll use the word abundance again. We are in conversation with our colleagues from different parts of the health economy, from the Met, to see what they've got, what they know, what is relevant to safeguarding. We've looked around the country to see what other partnerships may have, and you look at some models that are very lean and some models that have 100+ priorities. We want to make it a meaningful, viable performance framework, and we're in the process of having those conversations. It's not settled yet, but I am confident when we come back to speak to you next year, we'll be able to give you a lot more detail about what that might look like. But there are colleagues along the table here who are far closer to it than that and could give you more detail as to what is or isn't available.
Yeah.
I think some of the challenges are that, some of our partners work across many local authorities. They're not just discrete to Hammersmith and Fulham. And so their data is often collated in a way that covers their particular, so with the police, with their BCU, with health, it's the IBC reach. And so then trying to narrow it down to specifically to Hammersmith and Fulham is where it becomes more tricky for them to localise it. They are trying to work around it so that we can get something that's much more localised and meaningful for us. But that has its inherent difficulties just because of how their data systems work. But it's a work in progress, as Derek said.
Yes, disaggregation is an issue, but I think if you can, it's not necessarily the responsibility for, because it's big about sort of how to integrate different systems. But I think if you have a list, I'd be really interested to see what you come up against, or frontline and practitioner, because I think we're entering an era where you can put that kind of ask forward. There's more and more data integration happening with more sophistication. So simmer on it. I'd be really interested to see that list. I had another question as well around the stop and search, what I'm going to call maybe a change of dynamic about the function of it, and what's underneath that, training, or how's it being received, responses, because that's obviously been a very hot potato, it's ongoing hot potato and quite a shift.
So Councillor, it's work that's been piloted by another London borough in partnership with the Met Police, and it's still work in progress. But essentially, what it's highlighted, and I think the report report to, is the fact that young people are stopped and searched at particular times of night without people considering that there might be a safeguarding issue, that there might be an issue of their welfare and well-being, as opposed to a criminal issue. Before we want to make sure that we address this sensitively, that we are considering issues appropriately, and not just using it as a tick box referral into, for example, children's social care, because that again could result in a disproportionate impact on some members of the community, or children from some communities. So it is being considered with the Met Police. We were all asked to do an audit last year, and as Derek said, the results of that are feeding into what will become a London practice, but it's a bit premature for us to comment on it because we're not holding that information.
Understood. I remember it was a very prominent part of the youth justice protocol that we did in co-production, so I'm really interested to see it come up. And I would imagine that the lack of familiarity of, the Met doesn't really have local, stationed officers. They're kind of quite movable or transient, whereas our Let team, I don't know, I wonder, because they actually have, I know they're completely different services and the responsibilities are different, but I think there's a stationary versus quite transient question, but I'd be really interested. I'm sure we'll hear more about that in due course as well. Did you want to come in, Sarah?
I was just going to say there will be updates because there was a
Yeah.
workshop last week, London-wide workshop, and there will be findings and recommendations that come from that workshop, which Hammersmith and Fulham were well represented at.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I maybe was just going to swing around, make sure I haven't missed anyone, but Kat, did you want to come in, by the way? Sorry.
Yes, I was just going to say on that, I attended the focus group. I attended the focus group last week for the stop and search audit, and actually Alison Savarich was there as well, who's heading up the Youth Justice Service. So very much a part of that, those negotiations and discussions. But yeah, they're going to be prepare a report with their findings. All 32 boroughs provided them with their audit, which is, they were thrilled. So they've got a vast amount of data to go through, but they will be providing a report in April next year. It's taken a bit longer than they planned, but yeah, that'll have a number of recommendations for us to implement, but we've already started on those recommendations from our own audit. So we have a local action plan to address some of the issues that came up through our audit.
Brilliant. Yeah, sounds like we're ahead of the curve as ever. So very positive. Thank you so much. Just making sure I haven't lost any final questions. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Very thorough, feel calm and at ease knowing that it's been so well looked at from so many different perspectives. Jackie.
If I could just make one final comment, Chair. Last year, in response to the working together, we did pilot new chairing arrangements. So Lucy O'Connor from the Met Police chaired, and I think we will all agree that she did an excellent job. It was on top of the day job. And as the report said, she really did create a very strong collaborative approach, which included all partners very equally. We're very pleased to be handing over to Derek as independent scrutineer and taking on the chair role, because what our pilot did teach us is that it's hard to do that on top of a day job. And thank you, Derek.
Just one thing, just in case anybody from the DFE is listening in tonight, I will be chairing the wider partnership meeting, but the designated or delegated safeguarding partners, it will be one of the safeguarding partners who chairs that meeting, which is the engine room of the partnership. That way we remain compliant with working together. But as Jackie's just said, then the system we're putting in place here is both lawfully compliant and an effective use of resources and taking a little bit of pressure off of some of our colleagues who are hugely busy.
Thank you. And thank you for the clarification, Derek. You're absolutely right. And I would just want to acknowledge that I am one of several executive safeguarding partners, the health, police, as well as Peter. So while I'm here, I'm also representing the other partners who are very engaged. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jackie. I'm sure you have Hermione's time turner somewhere in there. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And Derek, be fascinated to hear about your just overall reflections. Feel free to come, and if it's anything strategic or things you're missing, or, you know, just say the words. We really appreciate what you're doing. Thank you so much. Brilliant. Okay, as ever, extremely welcome to join if you didn't have anything more gripping to do on a Monday evening, the rest of it, but also very free to go at the same time. So I'll look down to take the pressure off. Great. We'll move on to item 5, which is the update on the National Children's Social Care Reforms and Transformation Agenda. For that one, I am handing over to drum roll to Sarah. Brilliant. Thanks, Sarah.
Good evening. So this is a very brief update on what is a significant transformation nationally for children's social care. Given that we're in the transformation year, as described by the Department of Education, it felt fitting to bring it at this point in time to update you about our progress against that. So the detail is in the paper that's shared with the PAC, so I'm not going to rehearse what's in the paper, but essentially this is the family's first programme, so which DfE introduced in response to the care review. So you'll probably remember there was an independent review of children's social care in 2022. In response to this, there were Pathfinder local authorities trialling different approaches, including joining up the system between early intervention and statutory child in need work, multi-agency approaches to child protection, family group decision-making, and looking at kinship care and the broader care market. We've been engaged. We haven't been one of the pathfinders, but we've been engaged in various forms of innovation, again, as you know, over the last few years, which have included our approaches to family group decision-making, safeguarding approaches which involved working with families and families leading planning. We've obviously, I'll look over to Phil here, that we introduced our family hubs, which were in place ahead of the reform programme. We have a strong multi-agency response to child protection. And again, that was resonated strongly in the LSCP annual report. And we've done lots around developing our fostering offer, including being part of the Foster with West London recruitment hub. So various forms of innovation. We knew we had a strong system in Hammersmith and Fulham. So we've taken a careful and thoughtful approach around how we respond to the reform agenda. So initially what we've done during the transformation year is mapped what we already do that aligns with the spirit of the reform and the expectation there. So our embedded practice model, systemic practice, where we take a relational approach working with families, our stable social work workforce, our consistent and strong leadership in terms of that workforce. We've then looked and developed three questions, really, three guiding principles in how we make changes in our system. So what we're striving for is the most effective multi-agency early intervention and protection for children. That what we do supports a relational approach by looking at handover and transition points to look at where consistency matters most for children, and looking at reducing wherever possible the need for statutory intervention, that's only there where it's absolutely necessary to improve the experiences of children, their welfare, their opportunities and their safety. So we've introduced governance arrangements in line with the expectations as set out in the Families Forward programme. That's a multi-agency forum, which I chair. Peter attends, Phil attends, Nandini attends, and a range of other multi-agency partners, including our voluntary sector, and they hold us to account for how we're thinking about the reform and how we're making any changes in our system. That reports into our children health and education and social care governance arrangements. And obviously I'm here this evening reporting in here about the journey of that. One of the central strands to this is how we co-produce with our families, with our partners and with our voluntary sector organisations. So we've got a range of ways of doing that. So we've got workshops set up, we've got Mentimeters, so ways of getting feedback through surveys. We have regular focus groups and sessions with staff. We're working closely with Youth Voice around how we engage our young people and our families with that, and also some of our voluntary sector organisations. What we want to do is make sure that we're doing that co-production informed by things that we can actually change. So we don't want to be consulting with families unless we're clear that there are options for us to think about. I think I've rattled through that, but from my perspective, I'm confident that what we're doing is informed by the evidence in terms of what works well in our system, what the drivers are for reform, and where we already know that we'd like to strengthen things or look differently at the way we work.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sarah. I had a question, but again, just going to make sure I'm not hogging the mic. Councillor Khan.
Can start us off. I wanted to understand better the adolescent family help team. If you can talk a little bit about that, and how is it different from the existing youth early help and CAM services?
Yep, absolutely. So the Families First programme, as set out by the Department for Education, uses the language of family help in thinking about how you bring together targeted early interventions with statutory social work interventions along a streamlined pathway. We're focused on retaining the strengths in our system and wanted to do things by evolution. We know our adolescents are highly represented in all parts of our systems, so it was fitting for us to start with looking at our adolescents, but we're going to do that incrementally because we want there to be an evidence base that working in this way will lead to better outcomes for them. So what we're currently doing is looking at adolescents, so 11 plus, who come through our front door and perhaps have been in touch with services previously, and testing out whether having a consistent practitioner based in one particular service area with links to all those organisations, agencies, teams that you've referenced and more, leads to better outcomes. And if they've already had contact with our system previously, it means we can really test out, is this different or does this feel the same as we've been working already? And we can do that whilst keeping the rest of our system stable.
I can ask a question.
You sure?
Yeah,
All right, great. Nandini.
I do sit on the board with you, so it's a bit odd, but anyway, does the reforms focus on social care practice as well? I mean, because parents are very worried. I mean, that is a big area of contention for parents or other people receiving social care support. So would this focus on practice as well?
Absolutely. What you're saying about the worry families often have about social care intervention in their life, certainly statutory intervention, the idea of creating a family help system and the language used centrally in these reforms, the idea is to support that narratives with families and communities about this being there to help families and help children. It doesn't, of course, get away from to intervene and take protective action for some children, but the approaches we're looking at with family group decision making is to look at how inclusive we are of family networks in building that safety where children do need protecting from harm.
I think a lot of education is needed because every time you say social services, people get scared. So I think a lot of reassurance is needed to make sure people feel it's helpful rather than intrusive.
And I think that relates to what I was talking about earlier. You're right, families do become worried about intervention in their lives. We've got the embedded systemic practice model. So there is always relationships as the highest context, and how we develop those in practice. It's never perfect, but that supports us in the work we do to try and build those relationships. And I think, as referred to in the LSCP presentation and questions as well, the fact that we're closely aligned as a multi-agency network, so working closely with education, working closely with health, builds that trust across with families as well, because different parts of the network can take a different approach with the family or draw on the relationships they have.
Did you want to come in?
Yeah. So you just mentioned the multi-agency groups, and so there's going to be now a new multi-agency steering group, is what the report talks about. How will residents, parents, and youth be represented on those new steering groups?
So Helen Green is part of the Reforms Board in terms of her oversight of the youth voice. We have some voluntary sector colleagues that we're working with, which includes the parent carer champions and how we engage in taking a steer there. We have a whole range of plans around how we engage with families, but we need to be at the right point where we have very specific questions for them, because I think what becomes really frustrating for families is when we're asking for open ideas about designing a system where it may be beyond our control to deliver on some of those things, either from a statutory perspective in terms of roles and responsibilities, financially, or a range of other things. So we want to make sure that the participation is meaningful, and that the influence of families, actually, they do have that agency and influence. So it's evolving at the moment, but the family voice is represented as part of that board.
Great, thank you. I had a question about the kinship strategy, which I actually think from memory, we had a really interesting discussion about in a corporate parenting board once. How's that evolving to forward?
So our head of fostering and permanence has just reviewed our current kinship strategy against the national strategy, and it's incomplete. The end result is yet he hasn't finished it essentially, but should be finished by the end of the year. But already looking at it, working through, is that there's lots of things that we're already doing across Hammersmith and shared service that reflects what's in the national recommendations for a kinship strategy. And what this review will do is put together some recommendations which will go to corporate parenting board in terms of what else we can do to strengthen our kinship offer. But it's already a relatively strong offer, particularly in Hammersmith and Fulham.
Yeah, thank you. I remember it was being navigated with a lot of care, but also ambition. So be really interested to see an update. Did you want to come in again, Councillor Khan?
So the report talks about new oversight of home education. And I was wondering how will that work? I know it's evolving, but how will it work in practice? And will there be increased monitoring of families and the like? Because the home education is something where I've always felt how do we monitor that the children are getting the right education if they're being homeschooled?
Council, I think we've discussed this quite a few times. Unfortunately, that doesn't sit within our responsibility. So obviously we monitor in terms of safeguarding, but if the parents have chosen to remove the young people from school and educate at home, they've taken on that responsibility. So what it requires is a change at central government rather than locally. As we've had many presentations here previously, we do a number of different checks which are actually above and beyond what is statutorily required. So, for example, just a couple of weeks ago, we organised a trip for our home education young people to go to the Natural History Museum, where they all went, about 35 of them, I think, went together, which was a really positive experience, and obviously gave them a chance to meet each other, etc. But essentially, the parents have made that decision, and we work with them on providing information and guidance, and then go from there.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask one more question, Chair? So I see that there's been funding and there's some grants, but what are the plans for sustaining these reforms once the one-off funding expires?
I think that's why it's part of why we're being very careful and thoughtful in the way we approach this, because we are committed to building sustainable and deliverable services. So we need to make sure that any changes we make, we're going to sustain. So as far as we understand, we've had a prevention grant, that the prevention grant in principle will continue. Obviously, we'll wait until the announcement of how much that is, but that's all part of our planning in terms of building on what we've got that works well, and making sure whatever we do to to change and align with further with the reforms is something that can be sustained within the resource that we have.
Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Final reflection, Nandini. Slightly mindful of time, but please go ahead. But just, sorry, that was a little passive aggressive of me. Go for it.
Very quickly, all these processes, including safeguarding and all the social care engagement, requires an element of advocacy, because you'll be dealing with very vulnerable residents, and many of them will not be able to speak for themselves. So is there any plans to improve our advocacy in the borough?
Thank you for reminding me of that, actually, because that's one of the areas that we're looking at within our child protection processes, about what capacity and opportunity do we have to develop further parental advocacy in child protection processes. So it's something that we're looking at and thinking about, how do we develop that. So yeah, thank you for the reminder about advocacy.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, Sarah. I'll move us on to the next item on the agenda, item 6, which is the local offer annual report for 2024-25 to note. And I'll ask Peter, please, to present. Thank you.
I'm actually going to pass straight over to Phil.
Love it. What are you doing here then, Peter?
I'm doing the next one.
Phil, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to share the report and the work of the local offer for special educational needs and disabilities service. So a lot of people think that the local offer is just a directory on a council website. It's actually a lot more than that. It's a whole service that works behind all the information that's provided on the website. The local offer for SEND, just to give you some context, is a service which provides information and support for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities up to the age of 25, and for their families and parents in particular. Through extensive co-production, we were told very loud and clear from our residents that family information services and the information on the local offer were too scattered across the piece, and they wanted us to bring all the information together in one place. That was a key piece of information we took, and it was quite important for us to hear that, because a lot of the central government dictates often require local authorities to provide separate directories, but within the same website. So we took the decision to bring a lot of information all together under the Family Hub website, and we did that in March 2024, so over a year now. And this has included information on the Family Hubs, the Family Information Service, which is a service and directory for parents of children pre-birth to 5 years of age. The Youth Hub, which is, again, a service and directory of information for young people aged 11 up to 19 or 25 if the child has SEND. And also, as I'm talking to you today, about the local offer for SEND. A local offer includes information on education, health, family help, youth services, for example, youth clubs, holiday programs, and a whole load of other information that's too much to list here. The local offer, as I mentioned, is a co-produced service, and you'll see from the slide just a selection. This is not all of them. These are the organizations that we work with, and then their network of families, young people, and children, to make sure that the local offer is as relevant to as many residents as possible. The organizations and their networks have helped us identify gaps in the local offer, to work on the content and the design of the pages, the structure of the website. And then finally, we were supported by these organizations and their networks of families to test the final pages before they went live. Next slide. So I just want to give you a few highlights, and just to briefly pick out from the main report some key pieces of information. So the local offer annual report is a requirement for every local authority to produce and to publish on their website. It should talk about residents' awareness of the local offer and the use of the local offer. It should also include feedback from young people and their parents, and also from professional organizations. It should discuss the key developments during the last year, of which we've highlighted our co-production work and outreach promotion. And then it should include next steps. And we have highlighted activities such as expanding our accessible content, for example, video, and also how we are going to approach increasing reach and engagement. As well as producing our annual report, we've also produced an easy read version, and we produce this in collaboration with a disabled people's organization. It's not a requirement, but it's best practice, and that's also published alongside the full report. The key points I'd like to raise are also that the local offer is the most visited part of the Family Hub website, which is quite significant, considering there are many parts of our Family Hub website. We'd also like to point out that more people this year know about the local offer than any other year previous. The majority of people who have used the local offer have reported that they find it helpful. There's been not only an increase in residents' awareness, but there's also been an increase in the use of the website. And also something that we're very proud of is that we were voted the best local offer in the country. It's a significant award because it wasn't a professional organization. Well, it was that NAFIS that awarded it, but it was awarded by parents across the country who had access to a number of local offers, and they felt ours was the best that they had used and seen. And as part of that award, NAFIS, which is the National Association for Family Information Services, highly commended our approach to co-production in producing our local offer. Next slide. So even though we have been awarded this prestigious award, we're not going to rest on our laurels. We're going to continually strive to be the best. And one of those areas that we are looking into is improving our accessibility and our engagement. And I'd like to talk about one example, and that is the work that we've been doing alongside partners in a supported internships case study video, which was co-produced with a local resident and a local organisation, Action on Disability. Both the filmmaker and the young person who's featured in the video had previously taken part in supported internships, so it was very real for everybody who was involved. And the video's been produced to support a new employment information session and will promote the pre-supported internship options as we go forwards. We also wanted to highlight our outreach promotion. The local offer I mentioned wasn't just a website and a directory of services, but also was a service that engages as much as it's possible within community sessions, meeting residents, parents, young people and children. And they will attend sessions where these groups of people will collect and attend. That will include things like local events, schools, family hubs, professional forums, and often these take part at the weekends and in the evenings. So it really is trying to get to as many residents as possible to make sure that our local offer is as relevant as it can be. Next slide. So the next steps, we're trying very hard to make sure that our local offer continues to create seamless information links across multiple services. That's quite easy to say, but incredibly difficult to, it's not that easy, no. Just because there are so many sectors involved, as you will imagine. We have not only education, but health, social care, just to name a few. The local offer will continue to co-produce updates on the health and well-being pages, of which there are a significant number. And we are going to be approaching our work in a multitude of ways. So it's not just the local offer and family information service colleagues who will be doing this, but we will be using volunteers and community organisations as well to encourage them to promote the local offer within the community too. And we're using, for example, our family hub champions who have a public health remit predominantly. However, we're going to ask them that every event that they attend, they also take that opportunity to promote the local offer as well. We're also connected very well to schools, and we attend lots of events that happen across the year. And we will also work with our partner organisations, the logos of which you saw on the first slide, to further strengthen engagement and awareness. And that's that presentation.
Great, thank you very much, Phil. I just wanted to, it took me a read through to work out a slight distinction. I just wanted to be very clear on, which is the local offer itself is, which you've got the award for, congratulations, is on the very holistic and thorough nature of the service end to end being thought through. But just to make the distinction, when you're talking about the awareness, that's not about people accessing the services, that's about awareness of the website. So I just wanted to be really clear, because that will otherwise undersell the, you know, it's not the provision of the service, this is to do with the engagement and communication on the website. So I just wanted to see how you would measure that. Is that kind of like total people who, I don't know if you, this would be very sophisticated if you had data on all the people who ascend and families and the percentage of which who have accessed a website page. That would be very cutting edge if you did do that. And I'd love to be impressed.
So the way we do it, there isn't really a national approach to this, but what we do have is we have a send survey that goes out every year, and we collect a variety of information through this survey, one of which is we ask the question, are you aware of the local offer? And that's how we collect that information. The usage is through the number of hits that we get from each of the pages that we're able to measure
Yes.
in the back end of
I
the,
see.
yes.
Yeah, so it's self-reported, so it's prone to a lot of variance anyway, because I was going to question the amounts that now makes total sense. It's not to do with the access, it's to do with on the website, and it's self-reported, so lots of margin for error. Got it, perfect. Thank you very much. Just wanted to clarify. Anyone else want to come in with any points on that? Councillor Afzal Khan also should be.
Yeah, so I'll just dig in further on that point. Thank you for clarifying that, and thank you for presenting the report quite thorough. So you have a target of 60% awareness up to March 2026. So currently you're at 47%, and that's the awareness that you have calculated from surveys that are sent annually. And so 47% awareness among SEN families. So how are you planning to increase that awareness? What steps are you planning to take? And then with this increased awareness, and it's come up quite a bit actually, so have you seen any tangible improvements in making the EHCPs being accessed more, or processing times going down, or specialist school placements taking place through the local offer website and the like?
I'll come to the first question, second question first, that's okay. So we wouldn't necessarily be able to track that data. In fact, some of what the local offer is trying to do in providing information and guidance for parents is to mean that they don't to apply for an education healthcare plan, because they have the information that's ordinarily available within the school provision and some of the other services as well. So you wouldn't necessarily see a correlation between the two. In terms of the, I guess for a better description, marketing, I guess it relates very similar to the types of things that we've presented previously around the family hubs. So we've done, because obviously the Family Hub website is a way that people can access the local offer. So all of the marketing that's happened around the Family Hub, so physical marketing that's gone out to places like pharmacies, dentists, etc. Phil has been out speaking to various different community groups, including residents associations, faith groups, sports clubs, etc. So we've looked at all ways that we can get access to the information out to people. There's only so far we can go with that. We obviously want people to be able to access the information and see what's available. It goes out through the schools, it goes out through the early years providers, but we can only really provide that information. We can't force someone to go onto the website and look for information. I guess they do that when they're looking for help or support, and if they feel like the provision that they have is okay, they don't necessarily need to go to the local offer.
So I completely understand the struggle that you have there in terms of reaching some families. And I was wondering
Just to clarify, I didn't say it was a struggle. I said that the key point is if they have the information they need, they wouldn't necessarily need to go to the local offer, because there are other ways that they would get that through the school Senko or talking to Parents Active or something like that. So I don't think it's a negative if they've not accessed the local offer. It would be if they weren't getting the services that they need, but our data suggests that they are getting the services they need.
Okay, so are the Senkos at all the secondary and primary schools aware of your local offer?
Yeah, so we present the information at the Senko Forum. It goes out via other mediums as well. It will go out via the Head Teachers Forum. So as much as we can be, the objective is that they're all aware.
Yeah, because I think that's probably the most direct route for a lot of SEN families, because if they have children in education, then education is where they will have engagement on a daily basis. So if we can provide that information and awareness that this offer exists through the Senkos, through the schools, then whether you have a SEN child or not, 100% of the families that are in education will have this information and awareness.
I might just come in and say, I think it was my first instinct as well. I think you just, to not lose the excellence of the offer. I think literally just the note that struck when you read it, the first stat is about a relatively error-prone method just by dint of the only way you can gather information about who's looking on a website. Whereas I think that's just, I would literally make a distinction in wording between local offer and local offer website. And literally just be, because I think you're not to undersell the very holistic award-winning aspect of all of your work. And then the only number you get is about a self-reported website thing, when people might call it something else. You know what people are like, the, you know, kind of local offer, they might call it, you know, send provision, they might call it anything. So it just, I think that's where we're slightly falling, but, you know, not to diminish the former rather than the latter.
Both points are really valid. I think that schools are key, same with early years providers, same with the family hubs. But in a sense, to access the local offer through the family hub, you have to access the family hub. But as you say, obviously the vast majority of the pupils are in school, so it is a good medium for sharing that information. But as I said, it wouldn't necessarily be everybody that would feel the need to go to that information if they feel that they have the services they need.
Thank you. Nandini.
I just slightly missed this point, but is family information service directory now a different one, or it's formed part of the family hub's website, of which local offer is a part?
Yes, so the overriding website is the family hub. And then once you access that, the local offer is a key element of the overall website.
Then the family information service.
And the family information service is also accessible within that, the youth hub as well as the activities that are taking place in family hubs. So when you go into the landing page, you have all the different tabs of the different services and directories.
Oh, I have gone, and actually I was trying to navigate a few things. So you don't have, actually there's no family information service as a tab at all there.
So that will come under the childcare tab. Is there a childcare tab that you can see? Yeah, no. So that would be, so again, that came through the co-production piece where families were telling us that family information service doesn't mean an awful lot to them. Childcare was very specifically what it is on the tin, yeah.
But one good thing is, if you Googled local offer for SEN, Hammersmith and Fulham, we couldn't land the page very easily. Now when I Googled it, I could land the page. So that is a good thing.
That's the acid test.
And then you notice on one of the pages there is the one that's been co-produced after the Partners in Change meeting, where we've got all of the information about the mental health services that exist.
Brilliant. Councillor May.
Thank you. Just to say thank you. I think it's a great report. And, you know, I was wondering, is there any challenges faced by this local offer? Do we have any challenges?
I guess the key one is the number of pages that are up there, the number of organisations and services that the local offer are promoting, and that they continually need reviewing. We set ourselves a challenge to review a certain number of pages by a certain time, but that often depends on organisations getting back to us, because it's not always, well, it isn't our information. We're holding the information of a whole load of other services and organisations. So it is resource heavy. Yeah, I guess that would probably be the key one.
It's just struck me in the NHS, the wording for this would be digital front door. That's what they use for this. It could be just there we go. That's if you ever needed to Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And let's not lose the fact that it's award-winning. It's absolutely fantastic. So brilliant. Thank you. I can tell that you're absolutely on it, Phil. So really appreciate it. And thank you for staying until 8:30. We have got Peter, here's your moment to shine. Got item 7, Summer in the City. We've got an update from Peter and from Jackie.
So, going to keep this quite short. I think you've got the report, which gives you the detail. So again, I think it was another excellent Summer in the City program this year. It was a real shame that we had a really unnecessary storm. As I was also on gold that day, I was looking at the weather forecast, everything that was coming in from the team and so on, and that meant unfortunately that the annual community day had to be cancelled, which was a huge shame. So a really positive experience. Lots of different providers. I think it was 32 local providers that were involved. You've got the kind of detail within the report there. Over 2,400 children attended, large proportion with SEND. And again, I think most important stat really is the percentage with free school meals and the wide variety of different community groups and ethnicities that were involved. So really positive experience. Again, something obviously I think the council should be really proud of. Key thing really, we were really pleased how the family hubs could be utilised for some more of the activities, which enabled us to reduce some of the costs, obviously in terms of kind of rentals and things like that, which was really positive. And the families really highlighted the importance of the fact that we had more varied sports and performing arts opportunities than previous years, which again is something that we're really pleased around. There was a lot of food involved, as always, which is kind of key with the HAF programme. 55% of providers involved the children in their own food preparation and food education, which was excellent. I went to visit a couple myself in the first week, one at Latimer, but I timed it really badly just after they'd all finished lunch. So that was really disappointing. But apart from that, the rest of the programme looked excellent. And as you can see, 100% of families said the programme supported their family by easing financial pressure, and 80% described noticeable improvements in their child's confidence and social development. So if you're looking for a couple of wins out of a summer programme, I guess they're the two real highlights. So yeah, great work from the commissioning team, specifically, I would say Marcus, who obviously has come to present on this previously, an enormous amount of work that he puts in personally to that. So a big thank you to him and also to LMP Action for kind of taking this forward on our behalf.
Brilliant. I actually think this is one of the most like easy to describe brilliant things that we do. And I was thinking about, you know, the direct thing is that it's like amazing engagement, confidence, all this stuff. The indirect, almost from a like nerdy policy perspective, 5 weeks of provision is a game changer because childcare rinses you, you know, it's the cost that everyone stresses about. And this is amazing provision where you get to meet loads of like people and do those. It's just brilliant. You know, I'll spare everyone the joke again about my mum sending me to holiday Bible week, just colouring pictures of Jesus when she was not religious and neither was I. But that's, you know, what parents who are working otherwise have to do. This is just and you know, all power to you if that's your thing. But this was literally just try and get us some childcare. It's amazing, and every single year it seems to be more and more blockbuster. So huge congrats.
I do think that's one of the keys. And what I would say is, Jackie, I think we've taken feedback from this meeting and having that conversation and the challenge from previous programmes and looked at how we could incorporate some of those things in, which has been really positive.
Yeah, very specifically about activities for young children, young people, special education needs and disabilities, and the whole issue about accessibility, inclusion, and also feedback about the distribution across the whole borough. I think in the early days there were pockets of concentration, and feedback from the panel was that it needed to be more widespread. So thank you very much.
No, it's brilliant. And just a final reflection from me before I hand over to others. I think it's like, this is when you know you live in London, is where you get to experience all of this amazing stuff that's on your doorstep that you just otherwise wouldn't. It's like, I don't know, just on so many levels. I think it's a really profound thing. So it's a joy to see it go from strength to strength. Councillor, who wants to thank the first of all? Absol Khan, I saw that hand first. and then you. Matthew.
I just wanted to commend it and I said and say that it is very hard working with so many partners and providers and managing all of that to provide a coherent, useful and something that celebrates our children. It is fantastic work. So I really appreciate the effort that goes into it, the effort that goes into building those partnerships and nurturing them long term, so this service can be a sustainable service. So well done to the entire team.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll pass that feedback on because it's really not us.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you once again. And I cannot thank you enough for this. And it is encouraging to see that effort and help bridging the gap. You know, I know what it is when, as a mother in those days, you know, having to, where do I take the children on holiday? What do I do? You know, you sit at home all day with children. I want to go there. I want to do this. But this summer in city is best thing that has ever happened to education. I must say, I'm sorry. People might not agree with me, but I think as a mother, I know it is. And thank you so much for this. And I missed the community day because of that rain. I was looking forward to that. I did look forward to that, but I missed it. But so thank you so much.
Hugely disappointing, but
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Amazing. Thank you. Any more for any more? Well, thank you. Amazing work. And I'll wrap just by saying that we've, just to note that we've, this is the last time we'll meet this year. The next meeting will be on the 27th of January when we've got that medium-term financial strategy. So we'll recharge our brains over the festive break.